the Northwest home for paranormal. You're listening to U.S. Phenomenon with your host, Mario Magana.
On a drive home from swing shift, the radio, my only companion, the voice of the legendary Art Bell, filled the car, a beacon in the darkness, speaking a world beyond our own. The stories untold, secrets kept just out of sight. That voice, those tales ignited a spark within me, a drive to seek the truth and explore the phenomenon that lies just beyond the edge of reason. From the whispers of the paranormal to the echoes of the unknown, my quest began. So join me, fellow night travelers, as we continue the journey, delving into the enigmas of the night's uncovering of mysteries that await us. This is U.S. Phenomenon. The search for answers never ends, and the adventures just begin. So there is a big announcement that is coming to U.S. Phenomenon. If you haven't had an opportunity to go to my website, please do so by going to onairmario.com and scroll down for our second annual Sasquatch Conference. If you missed it last year, it sold out quickly. It was at Lost Woods Breweries. Shout out to Lost Woods. We're working on a new venue that will be able to hold everyone. So get your name go to my website, onairmario.com, to subscribe, or scroll down till you see the U.S. Phenomenon Sasquatch Conference and register, okay? It's free to register. You'll be up to date on the latest information on when the show's going to happen and all those fun details. I'm telling you, get on the list. It is going to sell out. If you're not a subscriber to the podcast, do so by going to onairmario.com or go to your favorite podcasting platform and search U.S. Phenomenon. So it was about sometime last year in December, we had two lovely guests join us. Kryste and Robert, they have known each other for quite some time. Now, they're going to share their story. So if you don't recall them and listen to the podcast in previous shows, I thought it'd be interesting to have them come back, touch base with us, and let us know what's going on. I'm going to bring our guest, Robert and Kryste, to U.S. Phenomenon. Welcome back to the show, guys. Now, for those who don't know you guys, Kryste, how did you meet Robert? And Kryste, you have a very special job that you're a telepathic. Right? Is this correct?
Well, I have a career as a hypnotherapist.
Hypnotherapist, thank you.
And Robert called me and said that he was looking for hypnosis because he had a feeling that actually for his whole life he had been abducted by aliens. This is the first time I'd ever gotten such a call. I've had a lot of clients with a lot of different needs and intentions, but this was the first call I'd ever had from someone who felt that they'd been abducted, and so I was pretty excited, a little bit nervous, but it turned out to be quite a revelation.
So, Robert, you already knew that you had been abducted, or were you able to get that information out of Robert?
I had an inclination that something had happened when I was 5 years old. I had a visitor come to my sliding door. I was 5 years old. I was laying down while sleeping next to my brother, and I knew something had happened. And I had looked up, got Kryste's number, and I told her, because my parents had told me something different that had happened, but I knew it wasn't that. So I asked her, can you find out? And she's like, let's try.
And how old were you when that happened? When you
I was 5 years old with the first encounter.
He was 5 years old then, and then it was August of 2022
when you two connected.
Yeah, that we connected. We started working to see, it wasn't so much have you been abducted, it's okay, it seems you have been. So what goes on when you're abducted? Let's get right to it. And that's what we did right at the very first meeting. And we found out, and that was what Robert needed to know.
And throughout my life, strange things were always happening.
Okay.
I knew it wasn't sleep paralysis. I ended up in the backyard one time, maybe about 3:30 in the morning, 4 in the morning, with just the markers on at night.
Right.
And I know I can sleepwalk.
Right. I was just going to say, was that like sleepwalking? Now, for those who are joining us via the stream and you're listening or watching, you feel free to leave us a comment if you have a question you'd like to ask us. Or you can send us a text. 775-990-5151 is the U.S. Phenomenon text line. Now, Robert, as you were just talking about waking up in the backyard, what was that like as a child to be disoriented like that? Do you recall? Or were you, because you
when you wake up,
yeah,
you won't remember anything. It feels like it's a dream. But then when you wake up and you're in different places, like the backyard, you didn't sleepwalk.
And you didn't get there by yourself.
And yeah, because it's, backyard's got, we live in the desert. So there's stickers and other stuff on the ground. And you just wake up and you're standing still.
Yeah, it's not a place you'd be walking around in the middle of the night. And besides that, the windows and doors were all locked.
Everything was locked.
So there was no way that he could have gotten out and then gotten back in. So yes, it was obvious that he has been abducted. And what we found out, Mario, was it was something that neither one of us could possibly have imagined, actually. So we can launch into what that is.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about you being outside of the house, the doors being locked, being as a young kid, that to me would be very traumatizing, not to be able to get back into your own home as a young child. Now, Kryste, when you're going through these, when you're doing a session with Robert, are you feeling like this? I'm assuming this has to be over multiple sessions, right? So when you're starting to get some information, what was that like for the first time?
So the very first time was awfully confusing, Mario, frankly, because I anticipated talking with what I call the higher self. So that Robert's higher self knows everything. Everybody has a higher self. This is the theory that we go by with this particular method, the quantum healing hypnosis technique that I use.
Sure.
So that was what we planned. And Robert went under like that. He was out, and he was out deep. And when he spoke up, I could barely hear him because it was very hard for him to actually make a sound. He was in such a deep theta state, altered consciousness. So I was asking questions as if I was talking to
my higher self.
His higher self.
Sure.
And the answer came back from a third person. It wasn't Robert's higher self, and it wasn't Robert. And that's when we realized, oh, Robert has brought someone else with him, unbeknownst to him. So when I say it's 31 conversations with an alien, I'm referring to an alien who we eventually named Fred.
We named Fred.
I asked the alien so many times, what can we call you? And the answer was always, we don't have names. It's not necessary. But Robert and I felt weird just referring to him or the being or the alien or whatever. So we named him Fred. And that helped us a little bit to at least, have something concrete. And from then on, pretty much, well, there were a few times when I put Robert under and he saw himself in a past life. And this was the big reveal, as a gray.
And for those who may not understand, a gray is an extraterrestrial life form. Is that correct?
Yes, the taller ones. Right. This particular gray, they're tall. They're very tall.
And very skinny. And just like they've been portrayed in the movies, actually. I never saw the gray myself.
Mm-hmm.
I only communicated with him through Robert, but I asked a few times. This went on for a year, by the way, from August 2022 to August 2023. So the 31 conversations occurred on a very regular basis.
And when you're having this conversation with this gray Fred, I almost called him Ted because I'm all about renaming people on this show. But when you're having this conversation with Fred, Kryste, do you feel like you're having a full-fledged conversation now? Is he teleporting through Robert to have this conversation with you, or is he Robert communicating to the gray, like almost like a telephone? Hey, this is what, like when you play the secret game back in the day where you're like, I eat apples. And then by the time it gets back to me, it's like, I didn't, whatever. It just completely changes. You know what I'm trying to
do know what you mean. And I got your question, and that's a very good question. Well, yeah, you go ahead.
So Fred had mentioned that we have a connection. I was his partner for, what did he say, 3 live sessions?
Yeah.
For 3 live sessions. So we could pick up on each other's telepathically. That's how we spoke, I guess, when I was his partner, through telepathically. So we already had a connection. I just never knew it was there.
Right.
Kryste was able to bring it up. And when Fred would come through, I didn't even know what was going on until she would tell me what had happened.
Yeah. So Robert was speaking as the gray, but they weren't Robert's thoughts or words. They were the words of the gray. So does that make it clear?
It does, because yeah. I mean, I there's not much more that I'm going to say in regards to that. But what's interesting to me is having these previous conversations with you guys, kind of getting the listeners back up to speed on what has transpired in the past, in the future, the present day now, and where you guys have been. What I find to be very interesting is that there are abductions, right? These things do happen, but they're not
all the time.
But they're not recorded. There's the research is very limited.
Most people don't mention it because, first of all, they don't understand what's happening. It's if they happen to be awake at any point during the abduction, they're frightened. They may be in pain. And then when they come back, when they are brought back by whatever alien took them, it almost seems like a dream, a bad dream. And if they mention it to somebody, well, chances are they're going to be considered crazy.
There's that stigmatism to it, that they're going to think, you're either doing drugs, you're drinking, you're crazy.
Sure.
So
sure.
When me and Kryste started doing these sessions, the hypnosis sessions, I didn't really tell a lot of people. And then I found out that my mom had been abducted with her sister. And my mom was towards the middle. My mom, we found out because Fred had said your mother was taken.
Yes. Well, so in actuality, Robert is a hybrid. He is the epitome of a hybrid human because he has the DNA of the gray that he was. And then so both of his parents had to be taken to the ship. And then this is what Fred told us. They both were taken. And then there was this mixing of the sperm and the egg and the DNA from Robert's gray body. And then actually your mother, Fred said that your mom was taken 10 times.
Yes.
Because it doesn't necessarily work each time. And so she had to keep returning and having the procedure until finally she was pregnant. And then she gave birth. But did she know about this? No. She was not aware of being taken and being impregnated.
And see, I have to ask. I was going to ask the question, like, how does she not know? And if you're a hybrid, what evidence do we have to back that? I guess is a question I have to ask, right?
Great question.
Yeah.
And there is definitely some evidence. You can tell about your. He has unbelievable physical strength, and also he's very
Pain tolerance.
The pain tolerance and the courage, just the courage to go through a life with 34 surgeries.
Photos of things that are on my body.
Sure.
I recently had hand surgery, and they're calling. I have a foreign object in my hand.
Interesting.
And the doctors the surgeon has no idea what it is, because they certainly kept track of all their surgical equipment, and nothing that they have ever used looks like what's in his hand. So odd things like that happened. Actually, Robert, after that first session that we had scheduled another one. And I remember specifically that it was scheduled for Friday.
Yeah, that was in August.
And so I called him on Thursday just to confirm that we would meet. And he answered. His voice was very, very weak. And he said, I'm in the hospital. I had a heart attack. And then, so he had been taken to the hospital on an emergency run. And the doctor and what are they called? The medical people who took you there.
Yes. Yeah. The paramedics.
The paramedics, nobody expected him to live. He was pretty much considered to be a goner. But I
had an ejection factor of my my heart. It was 18. So they said your heart was barely pumping. That happened on a Wednesday. Monday, I was back at the gym on the treadmill, but at a light. So they were fascinated that.
That's miracles type stuff,
Yeah.
right there.
And what was it? A week or two or 10 days or 2 weeks later, he went back, for checkup, and there was no sign that he had ever had a heart attack.
And they said it went back like if it never happened, but I did have a stent put in my heart.
Sure.
So,
well,
I also had a lump on my neck as well. Go ahead.
You have a lump in your neck? Is that what you said?
I had a lump on my neck.
This is later. This is another time.
So they wanted, and I got photos of that. The doctor said that if I had been around or working in radiation, and I said no. And he goes, well, your lymph nodes are covered in nodules. So an oncologist that we had spoken to said you have radiation poisoning.
Unbelievable.
They went from the
exam. No,
they were going to do an MRI with contrast, and they had to get the approval from the insurance, and that was 5 weeks out. I think 6 weeks, and it disappeared.
So it just went away, just like a miracle of a higher being, just gone.
And he had never been near any radiation.
No.
Okay.
Never.
We had Fred, and Fred said, our ship is loaded with radiation. We get in decontamination units. We caused it, so we fixed it.
Wow.
And that she had asked. I didn't know that until I woke up.
Yeah, this is what happens under hypnosis. I can ask questions about these very bizarre goings on with Robert's body, and then Fred would give us the answer, and that was particularly outstanding because it was so clear. His neck was swollen, and then all of a sudden it was just gone, and there was no sign that anything had ever been there.
Have you guys ever done it live on? Like, have you ever done a session live on any type of platform? Like, if you like right now, if you were to do a session with Robert, have you ever done anything like that live for
we videotaped a couple of times, but we've recorded every single one, but we have not done anything live on a platform.
No.
It just didn't occur to us. The whole thing is such a phenomenon. And
it's a huge phenomenon because I've never, I mean, other than talking to you two, I haven't had the opportunity to talk to anybody. And when you look up UFO abductions of people that have been abducted by either a UFO or some type of alien, or however they want to name that abduction. There's not a lot of evidence out here that is researchable, that where people are laying this type of footwork to show like, oh yeah, 17 people from Washington were abducted last week, and 25 from Texas, and 2 from DC, and and 1 from Florida. However that plays out, we're not seeing that type of data anywhere. At least I haven't been able to find it.
No,
that's true.
And the people who I have run into and who I've read about, because I started buying books written by people who'd had these experiences, had their own experiences. It doesn't really come close to Robert's experience of having been an alien himself and then come to Earth because of an event that occurred where he and his partner were, as a gray, Robert was in charge of retrieving humans and protecting the ship and protecting each other. Fred told us this so many times. There were a lot of questions Fred couldn't answer about what exactly was going on with Robert when he was on the ship and being examined or being experimented on. Fred would say, I'm not there watching. It's the others who do the experiments.
And the others are a shorter type of gray. They're the brains of the operation. And
we called them the scientists, for lack of a better word. So the scientists were doing the experiments. And, this is not a romantic kind of topic. It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. One of our main goals was to see exactly what was happening when Robert was taken. So we did that with him just going under, and those were times when Fred didn't show up. He may have been watching, he may have been there, but he didn't speak because I was wanting to speak with only Robert, which is what I do all the time with clients in past life regressions.
Sure.
But this was like a past life regression in that Robert was recalling the details of what happened when he was taken to the ship. Well, a couple of times we did that, and it was so revealing and so frightening that it didn't last very long, because what they were doing, it was very invasive, and Robert would react to it. In fact, it was very frightening for me to watch him reacting, because I thought, I won't demonstrate it exactly, but he almost stopped breathing, and he was clearly panicked. And so I ended it and had him come back. I had to yell at him and say, stop, come back now, because it looked as if the position that he was getting in, and it looked as if he was going to choke.
Oh.
And yeah.
You don't feel them when they're working on you.
Sure.
You take that out, that you can't remember.
Right.
But
when you talk about these experiments, some of them being probably horrific, I don't know that these types of experiments that you guys are in, sharing in some detail, if they are appropriate for for a radio platform, or for any matter of to have these experiments that you guys have gone through, or Robert has gone through, for you to actually hear or get that type of information, Kryste, that is, for someone who is, like for Robert, us, including yourself, we don't know, because that's not on this normal plane for us. We don't see these types of things on a daily basis. So if something like this is going on for Robert, you getting this type of information that you're able to then share with us here on the show, but to also put the word out there for others to share their stories of maybe they've been abducted. As we continue down the show, if you are listening via the radio show, Be sure to check out the entire interview on our podcast page. Go to your favorite podcasting platform. Just search U.S. Phenomenon on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. Now, excuse me, Robert,
Yes.
I got to ask you, at your age now, do you feel like that you're going to go back to being a gray? And do you know your gray alien name? I
We
guess.
don't have names, but yeah, they've told us
Yeah,
in a couple of different sessions that
right.
I
You
will
don't
be
have,
going back.
okay.
But most recently, you were told that you have another 10 years here
Yes.
on the earth, and then you will go back, and they've already planned, the powers that be, the scientists and whoever is above them, in the pecking order, have already decided that Robert will reincarnate, but he will be very different. And he is basically being taken now by a different set of beings, and they are feeding him information. He's downloading scientific information that they say will be so futuristic that when he comes back, he will be lauded as a genius, a scientific genius. And
The experiments now are not physical. It's all educational
for him,
for me.
when he's taken.
I'm no longer put on a table
Okay.
and
Yeah.
probing. Yes.
You're not going through those. Now it's all about
No,
downloading.
thank God.
I want to make it clear too that when Robert's taken, he is not in a conscious state. He goes to sleep at night, expecting to sleep until morning. Well, you know better now.
Yes.
That rarely happens. But he is taken out of his bed, and all of the others in the house who live there and are asleep, they are kept asleep. And he is kept asleep. And he's taken, then he comes back, doesn't know what happened, but he doesn't feel well. He's usually exhausted
the next day.
the next day because things were going on, but he has no control over it.
I wake up in different positions.
Yeah.
And I only sleep on my back with a bolster underneath my legs. And I will wake up sideways. I'll wake up on my stomach. And I know I can't sleep like that.
Do they physically take your whole body, or do they just take your like
They take my body.
the whole body? Okay.
Yes.
Well, they're experimenting on his body. And
Sure.
and they told us that Fred told us that they had accelerated the actually taking him more and more often. Right?
He had mentioned that they take us. The experiments are going more, and the abductions are happening more because my human body is getting older, while the parts of that are DNA from the gray are still young. So they want to see what's going on with my body.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because like they don't age, right? Or do they age? Do they get old? I mean,
The life cycle is 800 years, and they can go up to 4 life cycles.
Yes.
And then after the 4th one, then they have free will.
so they can do whatever they want. When you say free
Right.
will, are you saying
Their
like
energy,
they get to
their,
do?
their life force or energy force can go wherever.
It leaves the form, and then they are just, what did Fred call it? I haven't listened to all the recordings yet, but as I write this down, and I've decided to make an audio book out of it and have a lot of the conversations themselves on the book, so that you hear the exact words and you hear the different tones of voice that are used. Didn't Fred say that they leave and then that's it? I mean, 800, 3 times 800. So they have been alive for 2,400 years.
And do they believe in like I guess I get into the question because for those who are like human and they have a spiritual belief, do they believe in a God, a creator, or do they believe that they are the God and the creator?
Exactly. That's what they are. They told us on a couple of different sessions that man needed to have structure, stability, and they created
all the different religions.
all the different religions. There's many different aliens or extraterrestrials as there are different cultures or ethnicities on Earth.
And this is, this is not a popular thing for people to hear about.
Sure. I mean,
but
it is not popular to hear from.
No, not at all.
Because most people they're not being abducted by aliens or by grays, or I don't want to like disrespect anybody, but people are not getting abducted, or they're not being taken from this plane and going into some spacecraft or whatever you want to call it and having experiments done or taken for a joyride. This isn't the flight of the Navigator, as I think of a ship, and where the little boy goes, he stays little and young and his whole family continues to grow, and that he's like, wait, I want to be with my family at the same plane as what people were not. None of us have that experience as Robert is having. And Kryste, for you to be able to have these conversations with an alien and to be able to put this in a book format and audio and video, I'm assuming later in time, is going to be quite fascinating. And this is why I love having you guys on, because sharing this with us gives us an opportunity to make us think, like, is this, like, what if someone else is listening to this show right now and says, look, I've had these things. This has happened to me.
That's why we're here. And I've run into that on another show. The woman who was hosting actually said to me, I've never told this to anybody, but I was abducted as a child. And she said, and I have 2 daughters, and they both were abducted. And that's another thing. Robert has 2 daughters. And because Robert didn't share any of these fears that he had about, I'm probably being abducted. Oh my gosh, what do I do about this? He'd never shared that with his family. And so it wasn't spoken of until after he started coming to me, and this all began to come out.
My youngest daughter, I never told her. And her boyfriend had mentioned what she had seen. And I asked my daughter that her boyfriend had told me. And my daughter explained and described them and the light that comes in exactly the way I see it.
Yes. So when his daughter finally opened up and said to Dad, yes, I saw this, and described what she saw, then we asked Fred, okay, are his daughters being taken? And Fred said, yes.
Yes.
And they will continue to be taken.
But not by Fred. There's
this other group.
Another group that is taking them that are the same species of gray as Fred.
As Fred explained, that there are always 2 spaceships that belong to them. It's kind of hard to name any of it because they don't have names. But so Fred came from one ship, and that's the ship that he and Robert had been on when they were partners. And then there was a second ship. So one ship is always here and retrieving, and I don't know where the other ship is, but we did get some information from Fred that at times the ship goes underwater. It just disappears under the water. And then there was a little bit of description about what that's like, but not a whole bunch of information coming.
Well, I want to talk about your book as well, but I want to ask the question, because it's been said a couple times in the show today, in this episode, about a partner. Now, this gray, Fred, who is your partner, are you guys talking about like you guys are like the Men in Black partners? Or are we talking like you guys are like relationship partners? Like you guys are together as
Men in Gray, Black. We would work as a team, go down, retrieve humans, bring them up.
Gotcha.
We worked taking care of the ship.
So you guys were like co-workers.
They were comrades.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
They were
Exactly.
comrades, and Robert was, one of the main goals was for him to protect his partner. I assume Fred protected you as well.
Yes.
And so, yes, there is no such thing as romance. It's a whole different thing. The Greys.
Well,
don't
clearly, I mean, from what you said earlier in our conversation, you were talking about how they, it was more of an experiment in regards to how they were going to have these offspring. You were talking about how they were inseminating Robert's mom to make the hybrid of Robert.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that that's how everything was done on a scientific base, not as a romantic, like I fell in love and you're right. I fell in love, got married. We had some little baby Greys.
Yeah.
No.
Fred had mentioned that they have no emotions. There's no happiness. There's no sadness.
There's no emotions.
There's no emotions.
There's no music. There's
Right.
no art. There's no color.
Boring. I got to ask you this.
Boring. Yes.
I mean, music is life. But when we talk about this, what are they saying? Have you got anything, Kryste, out of any of these conversations, out of all these conversations that you've had about what the human race is? Any messages that they want you to pass along in your conversations that would be inspirational for humans, or like, hey, wake up and smell the coffee because it ain't looking good?
Actually, I asked.
All of the above.
Well, we asked Fred if it was okay if we let people know what was going on. First of all, I mean, we said we intend to tell people about this, and Fred was fine with that, even though it wasn't exactly kosher for him to be talking for him to be communicating with us at all. And when I asked Fred, and then I'll get back to your question, I asked Fred to manifest in front of me. I wanted to see this being. I thought I did. I thought about it a long time, and finally I asked if he would, and Fred said, no, I won't do that. I am not actually allowed to be leaving the ship unless I'm retrieving someone. So I can't physically come to you. And then I was actually, what he did say to me first was, do you really want me to? And I thought about that in the moment, and I said, no, I guess not.
Do you really want to see me?
Do I really want to see him? And so my thoughts were, well, if he is here and embodied in my living room, then will he just appear anytime he wants to? And I'd rather not have that happen. And so it was good that he said no. As far as messages to be given to the public, I think that's what I want to write the book in order to do, just to let people know that this is happening. And we believe, and I again reiterate, I read so many books now and talked to quite a few people who've had some similar, but not exactly the same situation. This is happening all over the place. It's happening to people all the time. And it will eventually be something that's accepted by all of us, because up until this point, it's just been romanticized. Mario, you've probably heard about the government hiding the fact that they have had aliens.
There's got to be a lot of cover-ups, but which one are you? Yeah,
exactly.
Fred did mention on a session that there's governments, they're working with extraterrestrials, and the governments think that they're getting the best of it. And Fred had mentioned that they're not.
They're getting the short end of the stick, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Now, what are their? I mean, there's so many. I'm going to use my words carefully here. There are a lot of different social media posts recently where people are trying to push an angle of how they're changing the perception of what the planet looks like. being a sphere, being flat Earth. When you guys have these conversations, are any of those types of questions, Kryste, in your? Do you ask those types of questions? What are the most important questions for you that you want to get out of these sessions that you're able to then share with us, or to even back to Robert?
Over and over, I asked in many different ways. I asked Fred, I wanted to know if the Greys were fiddling with DNA of humans because it benefited them somehow, or if they really had our best interests as humans at heart. It took a while before I got a straight answer. And I now know that the Greys are not doing this for humanity. He said very clearly, they are changing the DNA in three main ways, changing human DNA so that they're taking out the super arrogance,
destructiveness,
and the destructiveness, and the warlike nature, because he said very clearly, there are so many different extraterrestrials all agreeing on one thing about the Earth, and that is they will not let humans destroy the Earth. Humans may destroy humans, but they're not going to be allowed to destroy Earth. And that was the main question. It took a while to get there.
No, yeah, that's good. I have another one that just kind of popped in my head, and this is something that, as we all know, that there's some great artifacts, that ancient artifacts. If you go, you have the Mayans and the Aztecs have built fantastic pyramids. You have the Pyramid of Giza's. Now, when you start to think, it's not like you were like, hey, Mario, we want you to go build these pyramids over in X, Y, and Z. And, and you weren't hearing the conversation back told about building, were these done by Greys? Do you guys know if that's something that has been talked about through your guys' conversation with Fred, or in any of your conversations, have they said, oh yeah, we were the ones that put this together, by either implanting, as you were talking about, experiments, giving the knowledge to humans to build these things, and how they would be able to share that same knowledge with, people that didn't even have telephones back in those days?
that did come up. Fred had said that mathematics, science, astronomy were all given and taught to humans.
And there's as we're talking, I realize it probably seems like, wow, why didn't they get more information, more scientific? We asked quite a few questions and got the answer from Fred that either he doesn't know or he can't talk about that. So there were a lot of things that were just sort of not answered. And as far as really specifics about different parts of the world and what was built, that didn't come up. But once I did, not only once, I guess a couple of times, I put Robert under so he could go to his past life as a Grey and see what it was like when he, as a Grey, came to Earth and humans were able to interact with him.
He said I was astonished by the color of the water, the oceans.
That's right, because there's so little color on the planet that they go to when they're not retrieving humans. And so everything about this planet is, color and vibrancy, and there it's just dull. But
when you took me back to
when it took you back to your planet, yes. Yeah. But when you, as a Grey, came to Earth and had that experience of humans looking at this extraterrestrial as a god.
She took me when I was somewhere in South America, right? Or Central America. And I was speaking to Kryste as if when I was a Grey, in Grey form. And I told her, they look at me as if I were a god. They revere me. And not only the like, let's say like the farmers or the people that
The common people.
the common people, the common person.
Sure.
Those weren't allowed. Only the hierarchy. And Christy said, "How do you know their hierarchy? Because they're adorned with jewelry. Their clothing is different. They look different.
So those were the people that were allowed to see you
Yeah,
and to have
those are the ones that were in charge.
and they bowed to him. It was the aliens. You know, Mario, I want to mention a series of books. They're the Eden books by Paul Wallis, Wallis. Before I worked with Robert, I didn't know about these books, but they are a fantastic resource for anybody who wonders about aliens' influence on humans and on the earth. Because he was an Episcopal churchman, priest, and for 31 years. And then he began to look at the Bible from a different point of view. And he's written 4 books. I just bought the most recent one, The Future of the Earth, relative to what's written in the Bible and what the Bible passages really are saying. It's quite interesting. I just started reading it. But there are so many blatant passages in the Bible that refer to aliens. And we don't expect that because we are told something totally different about the Bible. And so anyway, Paul Wallis books, 4 of them, all about Eden, the Eden conspiracy, Escape from Eden. They are, I think that people will look back in the future once we accept that there are aliens and see his books as being the first that really brought the truth forward about about our history.
About a pioneer who has written about this stuff, and we'll look back in history and say, wow, he was a pioneer in those days to be able to come up with this type of information. You know, I think that if I was an average listener to the radio show, and definitely listen, I try to go back to my younger self when I listen to you guys talk to bring out these questions that I would probably ask even at a younger age who didn't work in this business. Having this conversation with you guys, to me, for those who are listening and are like, what is this? I mean, this has to be as close to what some of the best radio I have ever heard in my entire life and I'm not talking entertainment wise, but educational wise in regards to getting information that you're sharing with us, because this is Robert's truth. This is Christy. This is your guys's, truth in regards to what you guys have been doing to get this information in these conversations. What is one piece of information in all the questions that you've asked, Christy? What is the one thing that is stuck out in your mind out of all the conversations that you've had?
Well, there are just so many facts and revelations. You know how I'd like to answer that is to tell you that the first few times that Robert was under and I was listening and trying to take this in and trying to make sense of it, right. I began to feel like I was walking around upside down. I didn't even know anymore what reality was, but I knew that I had to get a grip. So what I decided was that this makes for me every moment that I'm alive more precious. Every person in the world more precious. Every blade of grass, every piece of music that I play. I'm a professional musician. That's what I've done my whole life. And then I just added the hypnotherapy in. And we can do this. We can take ourselves out of our little worlds that we operate in all the time, running around with ego and jealousies and love and romance and all this. And we can step outside and then look at humanity from a completely different viewpoint, a different lens. And it's to me, it's not frightening. It's not scary. It's a revelation. It makes me appreciate everything in a whole different way.
I mean, when you talk about not scary, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, there are tons of movies that are available on whatever platform you watch movies on, and nowadays it's some, we're being, some zombie apocalypse is coming, some Independence Day is coming, or however that plays out. Don't you think that I don't want to call it like Hollywood being pushing these different types of movies, out in regards to having that uneasy feeling? Because let's be honest, if you got to leave this planet and you're going into a spaceship, you would think, if you're not remembering, or if you have some type of recollection, you think you're probably dying, right?
Scary as hell.
That's why I say this DNA from the gray seems to be what is evidence. I mean, this is evidence of the DNA, because Robert, the courage that it takes for a person to keep breathing, knowing that he has no control over where he's going to end up and what's going to happen to him every time he lays down in bed.
Christy says it's courage and that I'm strong. I have no choice. They're going to take me no matter what.
I mean, and here's a fun question. Like, Robert, have you ever, I mean, I'm sure you've gone on vacation, but has it happened on a vacation?
Yes.
Well,
No
when
fun.
you went to Germany just recently, did it?
Spain.
Were they there?
There's a weird light. It happened in Spain. It happened in Ireland and in Edinburgh when I was there. So yeah, no matter where I go, that things happen. Happened a lot, and I have family in Albuquerque, and it would happen a lot up there.
And there are other people around when he's gone camping, for instance, who notice that there's a light up in the air, up in the sky, and that light is, they'll say, that light's following us. What is that?
And it's a really, really vibrant blue light.
And the little kid says, that's not a plane, Daddy, to his dad.
Right.
And it's like, you're right. That's not a plane. And then they say to him, okay, Robert, you're not going on vacation with us anymore. Because it's
Robert, you're getting from all ends of the stick, man. I mean, if you're not
literally,
I mean, if you're not getting abducted, you got your friends are like, hey, you can't hang out with us, man. You're a liability. You're going to get us taken. Can't have that.
Mario, we're very normal people. I mean, Robert has an extended family and a very solid existence with lots of people who love him and who support him, and he's he's really looked up to in his family, and so we're not people who are looking to, I don't know what, cash in on something. No, this just happened. And me, like I said, I'd never had anybody else come to me with anything like this, except I'll talk about the book, except when a man that I was in a romantic relationship with went under over and over and over. This was back in about 2015. And he remote viewed and went to a time 25,000 years ago where he saw a tribe, an ancient tribe of who he believes are his ancestors. So that was the first time that something really extraordinary happened to me as a hypnotherapist. This book that he and I co-wrote then, it's called Discovery. It's book 1 of the Legacy series. It's a remote time viewer's journey to his ancestors. And I'm bringing it up because, first of all, I would love for people to read it, because it's a book about a beautiful group of people who are, they believe they're the only humans on the earth because they've never seen any other humans. And they're operating in what is now known as Northern Europe. And the reason we know where they were is because my co-author, Rick, was an American Airlines pilot as a career. And he used to fly over this area all the time. So that when under hypnosis, he went back and in time, we believe that he was magnetized by these people because they are his ancestors, he could see, he could recognize locations because of the terrain that he had flown over multiple times in his career.
And
And
in this book, are there other humans anymore, or is it just in this area where humans? This is the only place where humans exist at this point in time. And
the 25,000 years ago,
yeah,
there were humans that they, at the end of the book, there's a cliffhanger, actually.
oh well, you know what? We don't want to give out the cliff.
So we don't want to give it away, but
Right.
but there are other people. It's just that, within their little areas, and they migrated to what we believe is, it's the Basque area now, French Basque and Spanish Basque area. But at that time, they were much further north, and they'd come from even further north, very, very cold regions. But the point I want to make is that there are a lot of hypnotherapists who are doing past life regressions and facilitating that sort of thing. People go back to Lemuria and Atlantis, or they're a king or queen someplace. But it seems to me that what's come to me is these really offbeat situations that can't have come from somebody's imagination because it was never talked about,
Right.
in our lifetimes. Robert's particular situation is so unique because of him being the hybrid. He's not totally, human. And have you ever heard about that happening before? I haven't.
I mean, until I met you guys, other than doing the radio show and podcast, I haven't. Yeah, it's not like you can only cover so much in so much time. But for example, if someone who is listening to the show, I will say this: you got to get a hold of Kryste. We'll put a link in the podcast. You can have her email address. If you're watching the show, it's available. We have it here. The address will be posted you can see it here. You can watch it, listen. We're going to put it in the podcast as well.
Thank you.
There's so many other questions that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact, we know that everyone's gonna be like, these guys are crazy, right? And as you were just talking about, that Robert is an established family man. He's got his own thing. Kryste, you've been doing your own thing for such a long time, in the therapy world, and then doing your own music and being a musician. When you go through this, I can't even imagine that you would even want to speak an iota of this information to anyone, because the first thing, as we talked about earlier in the show, people are going to think you're nuts.
Their eyes glaze over, Mario.
I mean, straight over. They're like, you guys are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But regardless, I think it's so important to share this information, not once, but not twice, but as many times as it takes. This is what this platform is here for, to be able to share your guys' truth. This is your truth. This is your story. It is not my place. It's no one else. Everyone gets to either take it as straight information, or they get to learn something from this. I always learn from you guys. And the biggest thing that my biggest takeaway here is that Robert has X amount of time that he has left on this planet. Then he's going to be reincarnated. To me, this is crazy. Like, to hear this, they're like, you already know what's going to happen, and that you're going to come back as a scientist. That to me is so intriguing to see. Like, I hope I'm alive to see this scientist come out of nowhere and be like, oh, I know that dude. That was Robert from back in the day.
And the information, Mario, the information that he is basically downloading, that he is absorbing into his being, so that when he comes back, he just has it. It is phenomenal, according to them. They say it's so far beyond anything that humans have access to right now.
Some of your listeners that might be listening might say, well, why are they showing this information with him right now? Why are they teaching him?
Right.
And Fred always said that every cell in our body is a Kodak. It'll remember everything. So I will be jumping into the next life already with that information.
Mhm.
Or yeah, the information. So
He just wants to make sure he's tall, dark, and handsome. He, I tell him all the time he's handsome, but you know, he would like to have a certain look, and so if they could make that happen, he'd be very happy.
Kryste asked him, what is the reason that he always asks?
Oh, Fred asked me.
Fred asked why. What's the reason?
What does Robert mean by this tall, dark, and handsome? What is that about? And I explained to Fred that, you know, they don't have the same concerns in their world, but here, you know, the physical body, it can look at a lot of different ways, and tall, dark, and handsome is considered to be very, very lovely and sexy and so forth. Well, what's sex? You know, well, I mean, then
You're going down the wormhole of places.
enough, you know.
I mean, I want to be tall, dark, and you know, I mean, only being 5'7", you know, I always call myself the short king, but needless to say, I'm like, it is a thing here on the planet, right? Now we're going down the philosophical views of dating and being, you know, wanted and mystique as an alpha, or this, you know, knight in shiny armor where we're just like, you know, big, and, you know, this physique, I think, is really the physical piece. But man, this is sexy up in here too. I mean, you know, I mean, you got to be smart, right? I mean, you're coming back as a scientist.
Yeah.
You're definitely going to be bullying some ladies. Coming back as a scientist. So, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, to have you both come on the show and talk about these different things. I got to say, you guys have to do this. You got to do something live where you guys have the camera set up, but as watching, so that you don't have to do all the back behind the scenes. You set it up, record it, or however that plays out. And you said you have some of that, but to share some of that, those clips with the listeners, or to any of your viewership. And as you continue to grow, I think that the story being told will also help others share their story and come forth with sharing.
Realize, that something is happening to them.
And that was actually the first thing that Robert said to me, was that he wanted to know for sure what was going on, and then he wanted other people to understand that they're going through something like that is it's real, and they should know that they're not crazy.
I mean, I would hope that people wouldn't think that, but look, everyone's going to have their own opinion, right? I mean, people probably think I'm crazy too, but as we get close to wrapping things up, and I, you know, we can do a little bit of bonus, whatnot, but I really, Robert, have you asked for a transition to have some type of peace and tranquility so that they're not downloading so much information at a rapid pace? Is it because they know how much time you have left?
Kryste has asked them, you know, when is it going to stop? And they said when they're ready. Kryste has also asked them, told them, "You're torturing him." No, we're not.
Yeah,
So
this was not fun to watch.
I have no control whatsoever.
Right.
You know, they have to do what they have to do. I'm basically along for the ride again.
I asked Fred several times. I said, okay, did this being ever give permission for this to happen? And Fred said each time, it was very consistent, they don't require permission. He didn't have a chance to give permission because it doesn't require permission. He has no say in it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you're up there. You're like, hey,
And I said, I ran across this the other day as I'm going through all these old the recordings. So what if Robert decided now that he's just done? He's done enough. He's been experimented on enough, and he's done, and he wants it to stop.
Oh yeah. What will happen?
Fred said, "It will stop when it's determined it's time for it to stop."
When the scientists determine.
Do you have any, as we get close to wrapping things up, do you have anything that you, from our last, conversations to now, I know that you've had a ton of conversations with these grays,
With the one, yeah, just
with right, multiple conversations with through Robert and the one gray Fred.
Fred.
I was going to call him Ted, but now we won't do that.
Fred, Ted.
Do you feel like, Kryste, that Robert's going to get any peace before he leaves?
No, I don't. And it makes me very sad because I watch him suffer. You know, he's really, really tired today because he's lost sleep and because different things have happened to him physically, and they're beyond his control.
Sure.
And so it's just become a way of life. It's kind of a constant torture, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I live with my mother, and she says, "Why do they keep doing this?" She knows, because she'll wake up and say, "I heard you scream." I go, "Why didn't you come in and help?" Because I couldn't move.
Yeah, because sometimes they have come in and just worked on him there in the house, right? But
Yeah,
most
so-
often he's taken. And it's a whole different thing now with them downloading this information. But something else is also going on, not just that download of information. Because, you wake up and there's certain parts of your body that hurt like crazy for no apparent reason.
Sure.
And so we have a choice. You could go under again and find out exactly what they're doing. But do you really want to know?
It's the same old song and dance.
Yeah, it is. It seems to be that you're going through these experiments. They're continuing to happen to you. I think the key for anyone who may be also having these types of, it's funny you say that, like, maybe they're having the same types of things. And something that you said just a few minutes ago was quite alarming, because it triggered something within me, not from me, but through a conversation having with my father about having, with my stepmother, having, talking about how my dad will be having these extreme nightmares, probably not tied to by any means. But it was interesting that, your mom was, hearing you scream. And I don't know that I'm having dreams like that, but I know that he's having nightmares, and I'm like, God, what the hell are you eating, or what is going on in your world that you're having these types of things? Is it food? You know what I mean? Is it food related? I'm not saying that your situation is the same as my old man, but what I'm saying is that it just was like, maybe I'll go back and ask him some other questions that may trigger something else out of that conversation from listening to your guys' conversation this evening.
And Mario, I want to say that I really, and I'm sure Robert does too, I really appreciate your thoughtfulness about this.
Very much so.
Yeah, and it's helped me, and I'm sure Robert too, have different thoughts about it too. We were just like in this, and here you are in these experiences, getting this information and marveling at it afterwards. We have a lot of recordings of us talking about it after it happened. I mean, there were scary times other than the one I mentioned. And so then, you have to sort of debrief afterwards. So we have those on the recordings as well. What I wanted to say about your dad, anytime there is something disturbing going on that you can't reason out, can't find a reason for, that's a good time to go to a hypnotherapist. Actually, a little plug there.
Right.
But seriously,
You'll find out.
Seriously,
like I did.
Yeah, because at least now, Robert and I mean, even though I'm not going through any of the pain and discomfort, we're sort of in it together. So you have somebody you can tell all this to.
Yeah, you can't keep it bottled up, because then you're going to go crazy.
And
Thinking
so,
of all the possibilities. What could it be? Is it a dream? Is it in my brain? Is it a vivid imagination?
yeah, you just go round and around and around and around and around with the same questions and the same fears. And at least when you go under and your higher self is there and you're able to, get the left brain out of it and just let your right brain take over so that you can actually be in this altered state and see what is actually happening, then the truth is known, and the truth is everything. The truth might be frightening, but you'll get used to it. It's better than not knowing and having some sort of disruption in one's life. I just worked with a woman last week on Friday who has been bulimic her whole adult life. You wonder why she's even walking around and talking. And after one session, she no longer is having that compulsion to throw up, eat, stuff herself with food, and then go vomit.
Ugh.
One session, and it's over, because she finally said, enough, I have to get help with this. I want to stop. I mean, she's so skin and bones, Mario. It was incredible, really, that she's, and so what I'm saying is there are so many applications of hypnotherapy. It's not just in order to find out if you're being taken.
Right.
It's not just like, who was I in a past life? It can be healing for the here and now. And she did not go to a past life. She went to an earlier stage of her life. And it was something that I just intuited. I was not trained to do what I did with her. It just came to me. This is what she needs right now. And she basically connected with her younger self. And through doing that with love, I love you, you are precious, she came out and she had a feeling about herself that she was worthy and she was lovable and she didn't have to do this anymore. Miracles happen with hypnotherapy. It's quite remarkable.
If someone needs a reading, they can get a hold of you at your email address at KrysteAndrews@gmail.com. We'll have the link posted within the podcast. Robert, again, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having us.
Your story and continuing to be a part of this platform to share what I would say is an exclusive interview. I mean, yes, you've done others, but I still think it's a great interview that you guys came to us to share this information. I find this to be quite fascinating, Robert, on so many different levels. I feel that I feel for you that you are going through this. That I hope you eventually get some peace within just being able to enjoy life on a normal basis, where that the Grays are able to say, you know what, we're done with Robert. Let's let Robert do his thing.
We can only hope.
Right. And Kryste, we are excited for you, and we look forward to having you guys back on. Maybe when we do our paranormal conference, we could have you guys come on via satellite and be a part of the paranormal conference from afar.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Yes. And Mario, I want you to know that we've just recently decided that we are going to start holding open meetings here in the town where we live.
And it's great.
And we'll invite people who are not only just interested in the subject and interested in what's happened with Robert, but who feel that they may have had their own experiences and they've never been able to talk about it before. Give them a platform. This is a safe place. So we're going to start doing that. And I think it's going to mushroom, actually.
As we get close to wrapping things up from the Pacific Northwest, from I like to call the Mecca of UFO sightings here with Maury Island, with Mount Rainier, with those sightings before the Roswell incident. I have to say this again. Thank you both for coming on the show. If you need to get a hold of Kryste, or you would like to get a hold of Kryste, you can find that information in the podcast. Go to your favorite podcasting platform. Just search US Phenomenon, or go to my website, onairmario.com, to subscribe. I will say this. We are getting very close to getting things dialed in for our Sasquatch conference. Now, last time we did it for it sold out. We were wall to wall packed. There was standing room only. It was, we were over capacity. So we're going to find we're going to have a larger venue for everyone to be a part of this. So you need to get on got to get on the waiting list, get on the mailer, get on the waiting list. Go to my website, onairmario.com, scroll, and you'll see U.S. Phenomenon Sasquatch Conference. Click on register so you'll get up to date with the latest information on what's going to happen, where it's going to be, if we're going to charge you. We're working on it so that you can just come for free, so that the sponsors will pay for it. And we're going to do all kinds of stuff, bigger than better. We'll do it live as we did then, and we'll stream the show live. And the last thing is, hopefully we'll have more merch to give out. And again, Robert and Kryste, thank you so much for coming on the show this evening to hang out and share. Any parting words before we leave, Kryste?
I just want to thank you for your attitude, for your welcoming us, and for helping us to talk about this and feel validated and accepted. And yes, and also the whole thing about it, there's really nothing to fear. If something is happening, if you're being taken, better to know and then deal with that rather than to just worry and wonder and worry and wonder. Find out. The truth is everything, and that's why we have stuck to the absolute truth with every single word that we say. That's paramount.
Well, thank you guys both for coming on the show this evening. And as we conclude here from the Pacific Northwest, I would like to say thank you for coming on tonight's voyage onto the extraordinary. I want to express my deepest gratitude to our listeners this evening, the U.S. Phenomenon family. Your unwavering curiosity and passion for the unknown makes our journey through the cosmos in the corner of our reality possible. To my daughter, the beacon of an inspiration and joy of my life, thank you for reminding me every day that the greatest mysteries aren't just out there in the vast universe, but also in our loving hearts of our home. As your host, Mario, I want to leave you with this thought. Keep your eyes gaze fixed on the stars, your mind open to endless possibilities. May the question you've pondered tonight spark conversations, inspire dreams, and remind us that we are all a part of the grand, mysterious phenomenon. Good night. As you stay curious, remember the adventure never ends. It only transforms. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the spirit of discovery alive. Good night.